But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you, but go home and go home in peace.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. Happy New Year. We are already 6 days, almost an entire week in the new year. Hope everyone had a wonderful new year. But one of the main things I often think about during the first week of every year is what? January 6th. So let's discuss it. Let's unpack what we know and where we are. Let's get to it.
God knows 31 reasons you were called to be a woman of God, virtuous woman he needs. God knows 31 reasons. 31 reasons why. God knows 31 reasons you were called to be a woman of God.
There was an interview done with Chief of Police Stephen Sudd back in April of 2023 on Fox News that never aired. So Tucker Carlson took it upon himself to re-interview him, right? Because he was the primary person in charge for the security on that day, January the 6th. And for whatever reason, it didn't air on Fox News. So I'm so appreciative of him going back and re-interviewing him and getting his thoughts and his perspective of what happened on that day. We're going to I'm going to play a couple of clips regarding this because again, we have to do our own investigative work. The news outlets will not do anything, will not expose what's happening. They will not highlight any of this. Their primary narrative is to blame everything on Trump and his supporters. So we're just going to jump into some details regarding this. So let's get into it.
But coming into it, absolutely zero with the intelligence that we know now existed, talking about attacking the Capitol, killing my police officers, attacking members of Congress and killing members of Congress. None of that was included in the intelligence coming up to.
That you received.
Correct. But we now know FBI, DHS was swimming in that intelligence. We also know now that the military seemed to have some very concerning intelligence as well.
So 2 years later, after the media has gone on a frenzy with blaming Trump and his supporters for inciting riots and violence at the Capitol, we are now aware that the DHS, FBI, and the military, the most prominent federal agencies that entire mission and purpose is to protect America from threats, foreign and domestic, all in cahoots with one another on this day. And we're supposed to trust our government? Let's keep going.
It's hard to overstate how strange that is because you were in charge of the actual facility that was the focus of the protest.
Well, think about it. I'm the chief of police at the United States Capitol, probably one of the most prominent and should be the most secure building in the United States in the world. You know, you'd like to think of that. But when you look at it, and don't take my word for it, look at, there's now at least four congressional reports talking about the intelligence failure, IG reports, GAO reports talking about various intelligence failures.
I'm going to read you one of those congressional reports he's referring to. It's entitled Peters Report Finds Significant Intelligence Failures by FBI, DHS, and Lead Up to January 6th Capitol Attack. U.S. Senator Gary Peters, chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, released a new report detailing the results of his investigation, examining intelligence failures by the FBI, the DHS, Office of Intelligence and Analysis in the lead up to the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. The report found that FBI and INA received numerous tips and were aware of significant online posts threatening violence at the Capitol, yet they failed to accurately assess the intelligence and share the information with law enforcement partners. Peters' investigation found that these missteps contributed to the security planning failures that left frontline officers unprepared for the violent mob that breached the Capitol and disrupted the peaceful transfer of power. I'm going to skip down. Despite the high volume of tips and online traffic about the potential for violence, some of which the FBI and the INA were aware as early as December 2020. These agencies failed to sound the alarm and share critical intelligence information that could have helped law enforcement better prepare for the events of January 6th. says Senator Peters. Okay. It goes on and on and on, lets us know that shocking failure of imagination from the intelligence agencies take these threats seriously, and on and on and on. He'll continue pressing for national security apparatus and intelligence agencies to learn more about these missteps. So, in other words, our government is working against us. In other words, it was a setup. Folks knew what was going to go down this particular day well in advance to make all of the necessary agencies, the chief of police, Stephen Sudd, well aware what was going on. So, you know what this makes me think about, you guys, is that when our kids, our grandkids, great grandkids, they read about this decades from now in their history books, what are they going to really be told? Because a lot of us are still unaware what in fact really happened. Our news outlets definitely don't talk about it. They don't do any kind of investigative work. And if you're not a person that keeps up with political affairs and really take the time to research, you're not going to know too much about it, but just kind of maybe some hearsay, what you heard through the grapevine type of information. You all, it just really makes you sit up. And I know a lot of our nation at this point really don't trust our government, especially since COVID, since that was turned out to be a complete and fabricated lie. It was also an agenda and an attack on humanity. You all better wake up. We have to, and we must wake up to what is being thrown in front of us and told for us to eat it. Let's continue this next clip.
So you've described this as an intelligence failure, but a failure is something that happens accidentally. And I don't see how this could be accidental. So walk us through the contact that you had with DHS and FBI in the days before January 6th.
I know Metropolitan was hosting a conference call every couple of Mondays, and I was on a couple of those conference calls. None of the intelligence that was coming up talking about the storming of the Capitol, killing members of Congress, or killing my police officers was ever discussed in those the conference calls that I was on, at least.
How could you not have? I don't work in a federal bureaucracy, but that doesn't seem to make sense at all.
Law enforcement that was down there. I had the military district of Washington, General Omar Jones, on the phone with me. I had the head of the National Guard, General William Walker, on the call. It was a call I coordinated. Not one person on that call talked about any concerns for the intelligence, the attack on the Capitol, the threats to officers that we were seeing that was out there. That's what's scary.
But to be clear, do we now know for a fact that the people on that call knew about those threats and didn't mention them to you?
So this is what we know for a fact, and I'll tell you, I'm not the only chief that was in the dark. You look at Robert Conte, head of the largest police department in Washington, D.C., he also said the same thing. He wasn't getting the same notifications like the Norfolk memo that came out the day before. He didn't get it. So Steve D'Antuono, who's the Washington Field Office FBI director, you look at the GAO report that came out February of this year. It talks about multiple emails. It's a GAO report, or it's a Senate report that just came out in July, just last month. Talks about multiple emails going to Steve D'Antuono on Sunday, Monday, and some probably Tuesday, just the days before, talking about the violence that they're predicting coming up to the Capitol. And I have a video call with him on that Tuesday, and nothing said about it.
Again, what could possibly be the explanation for that?
I'm not really sure.
But you've done this for over 30 years. You're very familiar. You've been in law enforcement in D.C. specifically for over 30 years. So you know how the city runs. You know how the federal agencies respond to protests. This is not the first violent protest.
Not at all.
There have been many.
I've done many national special security events, and this was handled differently. No, the intelligence, no jib, no coordination, no discussion in advance. It's almost like they wanted it to be watered down, the intelligence to be watered down for some reason. I talked about a little bit in the book that maybe they were concerned for the Trump invoking the Insurrection Act, and they're worried about that. But I've had people, there's those other, thoughts out there. But luckily we still have people investigating this, because I still think there's puzzle pieces missing. Someone's going to find out what's really behind all this.
So this is beyond strange. This is totally not an accident. I totally, in my opinion, see it as a complete intentional agenda that was properly planned, that was proper. The federal government agencies were in cahoots with one another. They told selective people, as Stephen Sudd testified, and left the certain ones out, right? Just the whole interview. If you all want to go and listen to it, it's on Tucker Carlson X. Listen to the whole entire interview. It just is, it really is mind blowing, and it really makes you sit back and ponder about what else is a lie. What else are they sending out and telling us to, believe it and just buy into it? And it's just completely ridiculous and just completely absurd. Stephen does also mention two different folks that were in charge of security that day. One of them being Michael Stinger. He was the Senate Sergeant at Arms. He resigned. He talks about one other particular person where they both came up missing. And what that means is they came up no longer with us. And so, I find it very interesting that they came up shortly thereafter no longer with us. And so, we can speculate what more than likely happened with them. But what I did look up for Michael Stinger was that he resigned immediately after January 6th. He was in charge of the security. He died the following year, 2022. But what was weird was his family announced his death, but did not give how or where he died. So you have a government official leader passes away, but no one is showing any form of respect for him. No one's talking about how and why. It just, all of it just doesn't add up. And I know the other gentleman he brought up, I can't recall his name, so go back and watch the interview, but he brought these folks up because, all of this is very speculatory. It's very suspect. And it just doesn't make any sense. And a lot of us as Americans, we no longer can just rely on our news media outlets. We have to start researching things for ourselves and really taking into account for what's really happening all around us and knowing how to discern what in fact is really the real genuine story, using your own common sense and not being afraid of being called a conspiracy theorist. In my opinion, this was a complete setup. This was a opportunity to try to portray Trump as this horrible president, to go down in history as inciting a riot along with his supporters, trying to paint us as liberals and some form of, extremists. This was a complete plot and setup, in my opinion. And the writing is on the wall. The reports are out. There's no way in the world that this wasn't intentional. You can't make me believe anything else. You can't. It was completely intentional. And I'm so upset about some of those that were, because I've seen various clips, and I'm not going to play all of them in this video for sake of time, but I've seen video footage of certain ones that were being antagonized. And what I mean by certain ones is Trump supporters were in the crowd and they were being told by one particular person dressed up in a bunch of Trump attire, but he was kind of like antagonizing different ones, telling different ones to do certain things, trying to egg it on and, and try to say, oh, go hit him and go hit the police officer, throw this, and just trying to edge it on. It was a very high and emotional day that day. And I'm gonna play one other clip before I end this video so you all can do your own assessment on that. But it's a lot of question marks in this. It's so many question marks, but all of them point at our government. And that's real. It ain't no 55 ways about it. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. You should be in a position of just wanting to know the truth of the whole matter. It shouldn't be about Republicans, Democrats, or none of that. It should be truly about, listen, if something goes down in this country, nobody's going to ask you what side you're on. It's going to happen to all of us. It's going to happen to that entire city, that entire state, this entire country. The good is going to suffer with the bad. Everybody is going to be dealing with the consequences together. So you should be more worried about the truth of the whole matter and get away from your allegiance to some party and finding out the truth. Primarily, especially as believers, we need to be like the sons of Issachar, being able to discern the signs of the times, because we truly are living in the last days, you all. We are really living in the final days where things are wrapping up. God is soon to return, and I'm not talking about his great return. Some of us won't be here this time next month. Some of us won't be here this time next year. So folks are getting up out of here each and every day, and they're going to stand before a Savior, a Lord, and a king, and they're going to account for how they moved here on earth. They're going to have to give an account for everything they said, done, agendas that was set, things that, they plotted against and schemed and tried to just fool individuals. And it's not going to work, you all. So I really, really want us to get back to being able to discern, being able to be a people that are more so about the truth of the whole matter and not just about personality and whatever the news media outlets wants to feed us, that we truly have common sense and know how to assess situations according to facts and according to for those that are believers, according to the Holy Spirit. And so I just leave you all with that. Like I said, I'm going to play one other clip that's very, very questionable. Make sure you leave it in the comments what your thoughts are regarding this, how you plan on moving forward. Maybe some things happen with you that allowed you to finally wake up and see what's really going on in our nation. And be sure to like, subscribe, shop31reasonsstore.com, get your merch. I will be going live. I am going to be at the inauguration, so I'll be going live later on this month, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye.
Stand up! Hey, you guys, we are one of you. We are one of you. Come on, Come on in. Welcome to our house. Come on.